you can have problems with Donald Trump. I had problems with Barack Obama. I didn't agree with Barack Obama, but Barack Obama was my president. He was my president. He was a duly elected president of the United States. My problem was when he forced things down America's throat, subverting the Constitution. Even Obamacare, which you could say, well, he passed it. Yes, but he rammed it through using some of the dirtiest tactics I've ever seen. And he ran through a major, major bill without any bipartisan support. I thought that that was bad news. More importantly, were things he did where he subverted the Constitution, where he pardoned illegal immigrants with a stroke of his pen. He does not have the right to do that. Where he silenced oppositional voices using the IRS. He did not have a right to do that. And increasingly, I believe, this spying on the Donald Trump campaign using the FBI, he did not have a right to do this. And, you know, when you look at James Comey, it is so interesting to me how often Democrats, once they're out of power, the Democrats start saying, maybe he was an anti-constitutional piece of garbage. You know, maybe Bill Clinton did rape women. Maybe, And now James Comey is suddenly the hero. The GOP, James Comey, who started this thing and who has been going around parading like he is the last righteous man in America, which is really embarrassing. The GOP has put out this ad, this great ad of how the Democrats felt about James Comey when he did something that hurt Hillary Clinton, when he came out and said we were reopening this case. This is cut number 7, this GOP ad they put out, which is just brilliant, of Democrats talking about James Comey.
Democrats have been very critical of James Comey, and many of us did call for his resignation.
Well, I was appalled by what Director Comey did.
Comey acted in an outrageous way.
He made a mistake. Maybe he's not in the right job.
Howard Dean, former Democratic candidate for president, says, quote, he may have destroyed the credibility of the FBI forever.
This was a very serious error in judgment.
The president ought to fire Comey immediately, and he ought to initiate an investigation.
What he did was unprecedented and outrageous, damaged the institution of law enforcement in this country.
The lowest moment in the history of the FBI.
I found it hard to believe that Comey, who I thought had some degree of integrity, would do this.
All I can tell you is the FBI director has no credibility. That's it.
So now the left, i.e. the media, but I repeat myself, is giving Comey every chance to parade this persona he has invented, this persona of, you know, sanctimonious probity. You know, he is the core of sacredness in America and sacred higher values in America. This guy who violated every principle of American governance by sending spies to stop Donald Trump. And again, if you're arguing principle, I will argue with you all day. I don't even care anymore about Trump's personality, because some of it I like the way he violates political correctness and the way he takes on the press, and the way he understands that we're in a battle over narrative and all this stuff. Love all that. But I don't even want to argue about it. I just want to know what the guy is doing. Is he upholding the principles of the country, or is he not? And Comey turns everything now into this self-righteous, moralistic, you know, I'm the good guy, you're the bad guy argument. He went after Rod Rosenstein, who is just now stepping down from the Justice Department. The comments he made about Rod Rosenstein, just to me, brought out the ugliness of who this guy is. This is cut number 1.
I think people like that, like Rod Rosenstein, who are people of accomplishment, but not real sterling character, strong character, find themselves trapped. And then they start telling themselves a story to justify their being trapped, which is, yeah, he's awful, but the country needs me. The Republicans are doing this in Congress now. Yeah, it's awful, but if I speak, I'll get defeated. And this nation needs me here right now. And in the process, he has eaten their soul. They're lost.
So Rod Rosenstein, you're saying, is a person not of a strong character?
Yeah, I don't think he is. Of accomplishment, very bright, but he's not strong enough.
There he is, James Comey, former head of the FBI, pronouncing on Rod Rosenstein's soul and how it's being eaten by Donald Trump. And I had to wonder, I mean, this was another one of these softball CNN, town halls. And obviously, at this point, nobody's watching CNN, so it's hard to know whether you should even play it. I mean, whether you should even give the, like as I said, last week, there's more prostitutes than there are CNN viewers, and good thing too, since prostitutes actually perform a service. But I wonder, like, did they get squeamish? I mean, I got squeamish when I was listening to this. I was thinking, ooh, stop doing that. And what was hilarious is, Rosenstein had his farewell to the Department of Justice over the weekend, and Bill Barr, the current, obviously, Attorney General, gave him a sort of little roast of a send-off, which included this, which drove the left insane because they are completely untouched by the panic and hysteria and the crisis mongering of the left. Listen to this.
There's been a debate raging for the last few months, and I think we have to get it resolved and decided tonight. And that is, which one of us is capable of the most deadpan expression? Now, I know this is a little unfair because I do my best work in the hearing, in congressional hearings. Rod does his standing behind the Attorney General at press conferences. So, what do you say? Is it Rod or me? Rod?
20 minutes.
20 minutes. He stood with a deadpan expression for 20 minutes. Anyway, I just like that because, I mean, just compare for a moment the difference between James Comey's sanctimonious attacking other people's souls, talking about their souls and where, James Comey has decided their souls are. And these guys basically understanding this is all politics, it's all power play. And it really should not be affecting them or changing the way they look at things and keeping their senses of humor. But I have to return to James Comey because this was Anderson Cooper giving him this softball platform in which to say basically, yeah, I investigated an oppositional presidential candidate, but what about it? What about it? Trying to turn what was pure power politics into principle. And let me play it first and then respond.
We acted in a responsible, limited, and constrained way. I'm proud of the way we conducted ourselves.
You said it's not spying. Why do you think Attorney General Barr used the word spying, which is obviously a word that the president has used as well?
I can't explain it. I mean, the only explanation I can think of is he used it because the president uses it, which is really disappointing. He knows better than that and knows that the FBI conducts electronic surveillance by going to federal judges and getting warrants based on probable cause.
But sending an investigator undercover to meet with somebody who is connected to the campaign, they claimed he was later on just a coffee boy. That is an extreme step, no?
No, it's a reasonable. That was the guy, Papadopoulos, who was the subject of the information we got from the Australians, that he had talked to the Russians.
Did you sign off on the investigator going?
I don't remember talking about that particular step with my team. I knew they were trying to see if they could check it out. That's a totally normal step. See if you can get somebody close to the person.
That's a totally normal step. First of all, there's a real question about whether the FBI themselves or the CIA fed the information to Papadopoulos so they'd have something to investigate. That is an open question right now, okay? The other thing is Comey knows he's in trouble. Comey is the one person in this whole story who could actually end up doing a perp walk. I don't think he will because I don't have a lot of faith in the way our government works about this stuff. But still, you can tell he doesn't remember whether he signed off on it because later he's going to have to talk to a judge about whether he did or not. So Trey Gowdy is on. Jason Chaffetz was hosting for Hannity, doing a very good job. And he had Trey Gowdy on and he asked him about this little exchange where he says, yeah, it's totally normal to go spy. It's not spying, it's surveillance. Not, you can tell the difference between surveillance and spying. Surveillance has many, many more letters in it. So it's totally different to secretly surveil somebody than it is to actually spy on them, which is short and sort of accurate. But Gowdy talks about the way he says it's totally normal to go spy on an opposition campaign.
I am sure that crackerjack reporter who hosted the town hall asked Jim Comey with specificity what was the factual predicate. If the FBI ran an informant in on George Papadopoulos, what was the factual predicate for doing so? Did the FBI also provide the factual predicate that they then tried to extract back from George Papadopoulos? And how in the world did someone with a historical level of animus like Peter Strzok, how in the world did you ever pick him to lead an investigation into someone he thought would be destabilizing for the Republic. But this is what you need to remember about Jim Comey, Jason. This is all you got to remember. If Rod Rosenstein had not fired him, he would still be the FBI director. The guy who talks about souls being eaten and the guy who says everybody else lacks character, he'd still be on an Air Force jet, sipping wine, crossing the country, had he not been fired. So this paragon of virtue, Jim Comey, self-described paragon of virtue, would still be the FBI director, still working for an administration that he thinks is too good for impeachment, had he not been fired.
That is a great point. That is a great point. That had he not been, and everything he did, by his own admission afterwards, has been vengeance against Trump for firing him. And you can see the animus. Talk about a historic animus toward Trump. You can see the rage he still holds to Trump. He's put Trump in the position of the devil. It's the devil who devours souls. But in Comey's mind, if you fire that paragon of virtue, James Comey, you're the devil. Is it principle or is it power? Are we look? Republicans are perfectly capable of playing power games. Sometimes in Washington, you have to play power games. My point now is that all the left is doing is playing power games because they have lost the argument on principle. Obviously, the economy works better when you cut regulation, when you cut taxes. Tax revenue is going up. It's going up. We're just spending so much money that it doesn't matter that it's going up, but it's going up even after the Trump tax cuts. Okay? So are we arguing about principle? Are we arguing about power? What James Comey did, what the FBI did, I believe, it's not proved yet, but I believe, was an abuse of power. And if you're going to argue that Trump is destroying the country, you have got to point to somewhere where Donald Trump has violated the Constitution the way and the principles of the Constitution, the way Obama did when he misused the IRS, the way Obama did when he misused the State Department, the way Obama did when he misused the Department of Justice. And you can't do it. I would be on Trump's case. I would fall on Trump like a ton of bricks if I thought he was dismissing the principles of the Constitution.